And do we have to think about that in a way that's sort of like, do we steer the market a little bit, or do we have to get involved, or will the market sort of figure that out on its own, or solve problems on its own? I should say.
We don't have a market, so every Adam Smith type argument about the self-correcting intelligence of the market, even though it wouldn't have been true then, is super not true once you have bank bailouts and you subsidize oil companies and you have monopolistic kind of investments in military manufacturers and things like that. So there's no self-correcting nature of a market there. Also, when you think about fundamental theory of why a market would self-correct, you have this idea that humans are going to be sense-making what they actually want, that provides a good quality of life, and that expresses itself as demand. And that demand is kind of the environmental niche. If we try and reify this with evolutionary theory, we reify theory of markets with evolutionary theory, the demand causes an evolutionary niche in which different providers of products and services that there is a demand for emerge. And so the variations in how they make their product or service are kind of like mutation. And then some of the companies will succeed, and so that's survival selection, and some won't. And then a couple companies that have different IP or a different approach or a different market segment might merge. And so that's like mate dynamics, where you get combinatorial dynamics. So the idea is that markets are like evolution. And so there's this kind of correcting, increasing complexity type dynamic. And of course, that people competing against each other to provide the best products and services at the best value to rational agents who will make the rationally best choice is what actually increases the quality of life for everyone. This is a cute idea that's obviously silly, because there was a meme going around on Facebook that said the smartest people go to the best colleges to go work at the biggest tech companies to figure out how to engineer addiction for children more effectively. And we call this meeting meaningful demand and the self-correcting nature of the market. The moment that you can manufacture demand, the intelligence of the whole thing's broken. And it's important to understand that supply and demand will have a symmetry between them on aggregate, meaning the company that's supplying and the collective body of all of the demand. But there is no coordination or intelligence of the collective body of all the customers, but there is a coordinated intelligence on the supply side. So it's really the supply side against a single customer. That is an asymmetric dynamic that doesn't have the same good for both of them. There's a lot of times where the person doesn't need to buy the new shit that now they feel like they need to buy for status or addiction or whatever type thing it is. It won't actually increase their quality of life in a meaningful way. But we can use, the supply side can use asymmetric manipulation tools to get people to want to buy it, and also confuse them about what the best product or service is, because people aren't actually seeing what the best product or service is. They're seeing what the best marketed one is. We can also then use our market dominant position to squish smaller competitors that have a better product or service, so it doesn't have a choice of actually emerging, on and on. So the self-correcting nature of a market is not a real thing anymore, to the degree that it ever was a real thing. And there's actually a deeper argument as to why it never really was. But even in this situation, the asymmetric ability to manufacture demand that actually breaks the intelligence of demand as the basis of selection is actually a fundamental broken kind of situation. Not to mention then that governments, the whole idea of a nation state or government is to bind or regulate the most predatory aspects of where there would be perverse financial incentives. So it'd be very profitable to do crime, extortion, so we're going to make a law not to do it. It would be profitable to cut down all the trees, so we make laws to say, no, we're protecting state parks. But as soon as the regulator is supposed to regulate economic interests, but that individual regulator is nowhere near as motivated to be effective at that personally as the economic interest is motivated to break their ability to be effective at it. This is the libertarian public choice critique of this kind of liberal democracy structure, representative liberal democracy. Then you end up getting a situation where market forces capture the regulating forces through campaign financing, through paying all the lobbyists, through getting compromising information on representatives, through whatever, right? They capture them and then have them actually serve their interest. And now you don't even have the checking forces of market competition, because you actually have the regulator doing the opposite of regulation. Because obviously the regulator will always be something that we want to try and capture in market dynamics if you can. So it's important to see all the places where the idea of the thing, right? The idea of what a healthy market would be and what a healthy constitutional republic would be and how they would work together, you'll see, like in this nation, the founding fathers said again and again things like, this system only works with a comprehensively educated public that understands the history of what governance systems failed and which ones succeeded and why, so that they don't get compelled into those things. It is educated enough to not be susceptible to propaganda, that if you don't actively engage yourself in civics, you're consenting de facto to be ruled, on and on. There's quotes, founding father quotes. I think this one is Jefferson. If I could either have perfect news and a trash government, or I could have perfect government and trash news, I'd take perfect news, right? Because if people were comprehensively educated, they could reform government, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So we don't have that. And so what you can see is that internal vested interest forces cause predation to the structures that were designed to be the best structures they could be. And so we've had radical institutional decay to where markets incentivize predation and extraction more than they incentivize meaningful production of the things that most matter. And representatives don't represent the people, they represent the financial interests that get them in place, and governments don't govern for the good of the whole. They pay attention to what will get them reelected on 4-year term cycles and how they figure out to make a lot of money on a very small salary and blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if I actually answered your question. I said that the underlying myth that there is this thing called a market and that it has self-correcting properties is really importantly gibberish. And we have to acknowledge that if we want to think sanely about things.